Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be showing you how to make this vest using the Hobbii Copenhagen pattern. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe, and let's get into it. So I have this Friends wool in this lilac colour. I actually painted my nails to match because I am a really sad person, but hey, it makes it, you know, cohesive. So yeah, I've got 4 skeins of this floating around somewhere, and then because I do like the colours being weaved in, I am using this sweet tweed, so it does have some variation in the lilac colour, so almost got pinks and greys going through it and bits of orange. And then I have a silk mohair in this blue colour, which is really pretty. I am slightly worried that these two are a bit too similar. These ones I have 3 of each, I think, from memory. This is colour 83. This one is colour number 6, and this one is colour number 63. I didn't even realise until just then that it has that on there, but that should make it easier for you to find, and I will link them in below. But I really like these, and they do wash well when it comes to blocking. So yeah, that's what we're going to go with, and I guess we may as well get started and cast on. So I'm going to be working all 3 of these together. So I'm just going to unravel these. These are worth keeping note of if you do wash your garments, which I recommend you should do because they do have the instructions on what you can and can't do. So just a little tip there. And I like that these ones from Hobbii do have the barcode so you can scan to find them again. So what I'm going to do is just unravel these enough to get started. There you go. So I've got all 3 strands together. And I am going to long tail cast on, which I might have to plonk these on the floor to do so. I'm going to create my slip knot. I've stretched out about 2 meters. I think that should hopefully be enough. If not, what I'll do is just unravel and do it again. So I don't know why I've stood up for this. Clearly I'm stressed about casting on. And how you cast on is totally up to you, but this is just the method I prefer. You can do the ribbing cast on as well. But yeah, there's loads of different types of cast on. This is just what I prefer to do. So that's what I'm going to do now for you. So I'm going to speed ahead because I'm going to be here for a while. And if I keep talking, I'm going to lose count. Okay, so I've just finished putting these onto the correct needle, because apparently today I don't have a brain. So here are all my stitches, and the perks of it being circular needles, again, is I can just slide that round onto the other side, no problems. So what I am going to do first, as you can see, I've still got quite a bit of a tail, which is getting very tangled, and I can't even tell which is which. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to cut my tail so I don't risk using this yarn instead of the yarn that is attached to the ball, especially because it appears my brain is not with it today. And I'm going to keep this because you never know when you're going to need some spare yarn. So if you are fairly new to knitting in the round, which is when you're knitting on circular needles, there's one thing you do have to be really careful of, because especially if you don't realize after doing a couple of rows, you will be completely defeated and want to just throw your project in the bin. And that is when you are knitting in the round, that you do not twist your stitches. So what I'm going to do is just make sure that all the little bumps of my cast on are facing in the same direction, and I'm going to make sure I do that for the first 2 rounds just to make sure nothing too untoward happens. So what I'm going to do is knit 2 stitches, pull 2 stitches, and repeat that because we are doing our ribbing. Just separate these out. So 1, 2, then we're going to bring the yarn round into the middle to do our 2 purl stitches, which I'm just going to shuffle these along. and you want to make sure you're picking up all of the yarns. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on doing that, making sure the bumps are facing inwards, alternating 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches. So when you're doing your cast on row, make sure it's an even number. So I'm going to carry on and I'll come back when I'm about to join the 2 ends here. Just quickly, while I am in the process of doing this, I do just want to show you how you can tell between knit stitches and purl stitches, particularly if you're new to knitting. So knit stitches, you do, even on the working on the first row, just above the cast on, you do start to get these V-type shapes here. And for purl stitches, you get these little bumps. So for purl stitches you get the bumps, knit stitches you get the sort of V shape, and that's really handy when you're working in 2x2 rib or any rib, is just to remember that, because if you get lost you just have to look down and you can see what stitch you need to be doing. Okay, so I have just finished doing my first row and I'm at the point where I need to connect, but you super zoomed in, so I will zoom you out a little bit just so I can actually move without the risk of falling out of frame. So what I'm going to do is just shuffle all my stitches towards the end. As you can see, it fits quite nicely onto my wire. There you go. So what you want to do is sort of hold these so you're not going to end up losing your stitches. And you want to just stretch out this cable, try and stretch out the cable, and make sure that there aren't any twists in your work, and make sure they all sit facing inward as they are here. If I just shuffle that up, they're all facing inward so there isn't a twist, because if you do get a twist, what will happen is the yarn twists while you're knitting it and there is no way to undo that. So this bit is probably the most important part of the process. Mistakes while you're knitting can be fixed. This you have to just completely undo, and it is a nightmare. Now that is all done. This first stitch is like so heart-wrenching every time. It is making sure that it's staying in the middle. We are going to knit that one stitch, and what we're going to do is exactly how we have been, is we are going to do 2x2 rib. So I'm going to be doing my 2 purl stitches now. I've done my 2 knit, and we're going to keep working like that. As I said, remember the V's are for the knitting and the bumps, these ones here, are for purling. Nice and easy, just like this. And this is definitely easier when you're not stretching your arms out basically completely straight to get over the light and the table and everything that's in the way. But yeah, this is what we're going to do. And for me, I'm going to do this until I have 7 centimeters of ribbing, and it is as simple as that. So you just want to keep going until you have your desired ribbing at the bottom of your sweater vest. So I am going to bid you farewell. I might pop in part way through when I've done a couple more rows. If not, I will see you at the 7 centimeter mark. Okay, so I am a couple of rows in and this is what it's looking like. It's very candy floss. I really like the blue popping through. I don't know if I'm the biggest fan. There's a couple of bits of orange. Here you go. So like orange specks coming through. But I'm sure the reality is once it's all knit up, you'll mainly see the blue and the purple colour. But yeah, this is what it's looking like so far. I have only done a couple of centimetres. Still got quite a bit to go, but this is what it's looking like colour-wise. I think realistically I'm not going to film any more today, so I will be back when this is done, which I think I already said I would be, but just in case I didn't. And I'm going to have a look at the footage and just see how long it is, because if this is the world's longest video, I'll split it into parts just so you don't get too bored and you can just kind of make along with me, which will be fun. So that's what it's looking like. I am going to tune out, so I will see you in the next one or in a couple of seconds on a different day once this is done. Okay, so I am now back and I've done the ribbing for the bottom part of the vest. Because we're working in the round, this means that we just have to work in knit stitches because the wrong side and the right side function in the same way as knitting a row, purling a row on flat needles. So what I am going to do is start knitting and continue to do so until I reach the desired length to create my armholes. So I will meet you back here once I have reached my 27 centimeters. As you can see here, I have worked in stockinette stitch for my desired length. I did make it a little bit shorter than initially planned, so it's about 25 centimeters rather than 27, just because I was thinking about the type of things I want to wear with it, and I'm thinking that wearing a shirt underneath will look really nice, poking out underneath the ribbing. So what I have done is I've moved my stitch marker up a million rows just so I can see where my starting point is, which I've got my tail here from where I cast on, and I have put my stitch marker just following the stitch up in the correct place, just so I know where I started so we can move on to the next step, which is to split the work into a front piece, oh hello Luna, and a back piece. And I'm just gonna hop the cat out the way. Oh, come on, Teeny. So we are going to bind off a couple of stitches and then we're going to separate it into a front and a back piece. So what I'm going to do is cast off 4 stitches and then knit 52, and then I'm going to bind off another 4 and then knit another 52, just so we start to separate our pieces. So I've just rotated my work round so I'm on the correct side. So what we are going to do is bind off 4 stitches. So we are going to knit the first one and the second, and then pull this stitch. I normally use my fingers, but I'm trying to look professional, which isn't working for me, so I'm just going to use my finger and shuffle this up. And what I'm going to do is pull that over the top and pull tight. So it's bound off 1, and we need to do that so we've bound off 4. So 2, 3, oh, 4. And by doing that, what we're essentially doing is splitting it into a front and a back piece and creating what is the start of our armholes. So now that I have bound off 4, what I'm going to do is count 52 stitches, put a stitch marker on just so I know where I am at. Okay, so I've just put a stitch marker on the 52nd stitch, and what I'm going to do is just work in knit stitch until I reach that marker, and then I am going to bind off another 4, essentially creating the start of my second armhole. So what we need to do is bind off another 4 to make essentially the start of the second armhole and separate the piece. So what we're going to do is knit 1, knit 2, here, 4. Great, and what we're going to do is knit until we are back at our first stitch marker. I have just finished knitting and binding off the last couple of stitches, so what I am going to do now is separate this into a front and a back piece. So that involves putting the stitches on hold that are going to be the back. Just to make my life easier, the piece that has the working yarn coming out of, I'm going to do as my front piece, and I'm going to put these ones on hold. And to do that, I'm going to be using my stitch holder. This is the largest one I have available at the moment because I've got my biggest one on another project, but you can also use a smaller pair of needles on a cable and just thread them through. You can attach stoppers onto the end. I'm going to see if I can try and cram them all on here, and if not, I also have a spare tiny one as well, but we will see how it goes. And what I do is I just shuffle my stitches down so there's no risk of them coming off while I do this. My technique is almost just to use it like another knitting needle. So I simply just slide it through like this and shuffle them along as necessary. And what we're going to do is go until the stitch marker on this side. There you go, so I've got all my back stitches on this stitch holder. As you can see, they're a bit scrunched, but it's going to do the job, so that's absolutely fine. And what we need to do now is work like we are working flat on this piece. So that means we're going to be knitting and purling a row starting on a purl row. So the first thing we need to do is do one purl row, and then we are going to start creating the front piece of our garment, which includes shaping for the armholes. So I'm just going to quickly purl this row and then I'll get back to you. So I have just finished doing my purl row. As I said earlier, we are going to be working back and forth as if we're not knitting in the round because we've separated our work to create the armholes. So I've done a purl row, which means my next row is a knit row, and we are going to start decreasing for the armholes on each right side row, so the row that we are knitting on. So what we do now is knit our first stitch to create the armholes, like so, and pull tight. And then what we're going to do is a left leaning decrease, and how we do that is slip one stitch as if we were going in to knit it onto our right needle. Then what we're going to do is knit one stitch like so, so we have 3 on our right needle. Then we're going to insert our left needle into the second stitch and pull it over the third stitch, almost as if to bind off. So we've technically decreased here. And so what we're going to do now after we've done this left leaning decrease is knit until we have 3 stitches remaining on the other side of our work, so we can do a right leaning decrease. Okay, so I now have my 3 stitches left, and we are going to do a right leaning decrease, also known as knitting 2 stitches together. And I think people find this one easier just because it is is a little easier than doing a left leaning decrease. So all we've got to do is slide our needle through 2 stitches and knit them together like this, and then we're going to knit our last stitch. So that's our first decrease row. And in total for me, I need to repeat doing a decrease row a total of 7 times. So I'm just going to do my purl row now, and I will come back to you once I've done that repeat. So my knitting decrease row and then a purl row 7 times. Okay, so as you can see, I have just finished doing my decreases to create the armholes. So what we need to do now is 1, make sure that we have finished on a purl row, and 2, we need to continue working in stockinette stitch. So knit a row, purl a row, until we reached our desired length for the neckline. Okay, so I have just finished working in stockinette stitch till my piece finishes at 36 centimeters. And what we're going to do now is bind off for the neckline. So what we need to do is make sure we have an equal number of stitches on either side that will be working for our shoulders. So what I'm going to do is use some stitch markers just to mark where the shoulders will start and almost mark the ending of where the bind off in the middle will be. So I have my 2 stitch markers, and what I'm going to do is count 14 stitches and put a stitch marker, because what we're going to do is knit the first 14 and the last 14 and then bind off the stitches in the middle. We've got 9 stitches in the middle that we need to bind off. So what I'm going to do is knit until I reach my stitch marker. Knit that last one. Okay, so as you can see, I have bound off in the middle, and what we're going to do now is work each shoulder separately. And how we do that is we are going to work on the right side, we will do our decreases, and then on the purl side we will just purl the whole row. Each decrease row we are going to knit the first stitch and then do a left leaning decrease, and then we are going to knit to the end, so the decrease is coming from the outer side. So I'm going to do my first decrease row, so I'm going to knit a stitch and then a left leaning decrease and then knit to the end. And now we're going to do our purl row, so we're just going to purl all the way across. And we are going to repeat that a total of 5 times. We'll be doing a decrease on the right side. So I'm going to work this one shoulder, and then I am going to come back and show you how I detach the yarn and add it to the other side to work on the other shoulder. Okay, since we are working the shoulders separately now, I've started working on this one, but my yarn keeps getting caught because of having these stitches on. So what I'm going to do is just pop them on a stitch holder so I can work freely on the other side. Okay, so those are on that stitch holder, which makes life a lot easier because, as you can see, it gets all tangled. So I am going to continue doing my decreases. In total I should only have 9 stitches left, and then what I need to do is work a couple of rows, which I think it is about 9. Yes, 9 rows in stockinette stitch, and then I can bind off the shoulder. Okay, so I have just finished doing my decreases here. So what I'm going to do is work 6 rows of stockinette stitch, and then what you can do is either choose to bind off if you're going to mattress stitch the front and the back together, or you can put the stitches on hold if you're going to do the 3 needle technique. And I'm just going to bind that off now. And what's quite good with the shoulders as well is it doesn't take too long to do them. That last one needs to go over the top. What we need to do is cut our yarn. I'm going to make sure I leave enough tail to be able to easily sew up the shoulders. And I am just going to take a yarn needle, darning needle, sewing needle, whatever you want to call it, roll these together to be able to get them through. And I am going to make sure, oh, my timer is going off. Sorry about that. And what I'm going to do is just make sure I'm going in the same direction. And I'm going to slide that through there and pull tight. So taking my needle off, through there, shuffle that down. And pull tight. And I'm going to leave that tail for later to be able to sew up the shoulders. Okay, so what we are going to do now is take these stitches off hold and put them onto our needles because the needles are no longer attached to our work. So on this shoulder we want to be working on the wrong side row first. So we need to make sure that we attach our yarn on this side. And what we need to do is attach it to that last stitch. I'm just going to keep that loop open so I can form a knot. And I can go back through all 3 of those loops. And pull tight. And by going in that stitch that's underneath, it avoids creating a giant bump on this side. Okay, so for our other shoulder, what we are going to do, we've joined the yarn and I've just pulled my first row. And what we're going to do on the right side row is decrease again by 1 stitch, but this time we are going to do a right side leaning decrease, which means we are going to knit until we have 3 stitches left on our needle. Okay, so we are going to knit these 2 together to do our decrease and knit 1 stitch. And this decrease is what we're going to repeat on this side 5 times until I have 9 stitches left, and then I'm going to work in stockinette stitch for 6 rows, and then I am going to bind off in the same way I did the other side. Okay, so I have just finished doing the shoulders for the front piece, as you can see here. So I need to remove my stitch markers because I don't need them anymore. But what we need to do is work on the back side. So we put the back on hold onto our stitch marker when we were about to start doing the decreases for the armholes. So what we need to do is take these off and then work exactly the same way doing the decreases in the arms. And once we have done that, we are going to work in stockinette stitch in the same way, but until it is about 3 centimeters shorter than our front piece. So what I'm going to do is put these on my needles now. As you can see, Luna has returned. Hey, darling. She always appears when I'm knitting. I don't know why. Great, so I've put my needles back onto my back piece. I'm just going to flip you over. And so what we're going to do is exactly the same as we did before, where we decrease on the right side. But the important thing is just to make sure that we get the armholes to match up. So what I'm going to do is attach my yarn, and I'm going to do exactly as I did last time, where I just attach in the stitch below. Okay, great, so we have attached our yarn. And we're starting on a wrong side row. So what I'm going to do is pull this row, and then we're going to start doing our decreases. And what I'll do is I'll put a timestamp just below, but also I'll make sure the video is chaptered so you can go back and watch doing the arm decreases instead of me repeating the whole process all over again. But I will come back to you once I finish doing the decreases and I'm working up to the final bit of the back piece. I have just finished working the armholes in the back, and what we need to do now is just work in stockinette stitch back and forth, so knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row, until it is about 3 centimeters shorter than the front. So if you want to, you can put a stitch marker in just so you can measure it up. So what I'm going to do is just work in stockinette stitch, and I'll come back to you when I'm about to do the neckline. Okay, so I have just finished working in stockinette stitch up to the point where I want my shoulders to connect, so about 3 centimeters shorter than the front. And what we need to do is bind off the back neckline. So what I need to do is knit 9 stitches, because that's how wide our shoulder is, bind off the ones in the middle, and then knit the 9 that will match up with that shoulder. So what I'm going to do is just use the same stitch markers as before, count 9 stitches, put them on, knit those 9, bind off the middle, and then we are ready to work the rest of the shoulders. So I'm going to bind off those ones up until the stitch marker, and then knit the rest of these, and I'll be back. So within the pattern, if you're going to bind off the same way, you will have left these on stitch holders, and you would be doing the 3 needle bind off, which involves knitting the stitches together. But because I've just bound off in a normal traditional sense so I can match a stitch, what I'm going to do now, because this is 1 row more than the bind off, I'm going to bind this off and this side as well, which means I will have to attach yarn here, and then I am going to stitch these together. And so what I'm going to do here is stitch the shoulders together. And how I've done that is turning the project inside out. So this is the wrong side, and I'm stitching the wrong sides together. But how you choose to stitch up your garments is completely up to you. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've just finished going this way, and this tail that I left earlier, I'm just going to go back over to make sure that's nice and secure in exactly the same way. So I'm now going to do the same thing, bind off this other shoulder wherever it's hiding, and I am also going to stitch it together, and then I am going to show you how to do the ribbing around the shoulders, the armholes and the neck, and then this is done. Okay, so here is a finished example of the ribbing. What I'm going to do is show you how to weave in to be able to catch the stitches here, so you can do the ribbing. So the first thing we need to do is just create a slip knot and slide our needle on. If you want a tighter ribbing so it doesn't look so loose, you can just size down a needle or half a size, and that will give you a cleaner finish. And what I'm going to do is just flip this inside out, because that's how I did my ribbing on this side. So for all the other bits of ribbing I need to do, I'm going to start with the garment inside out. So where I have my stitch marker, when I marked where my armholes were going to be, is where I'm going to start. And what we're going to do is simply identify the first stitch we want to go through. Make sure our yarn is also on the correct side, so to the left. And I'm going to insert through that stitch and take my working yarn, wrap it around, almost like casting on. and then lift this stitch over the top to secure it in. So now it's attached to that. So I'll just show you that again. So I'm going to go in through there with my working yarn here, wrap around my thumb, pull it here, and then I would be using my knitting needle, but because of how my filming setup is, I actually can't, because I would need to be stood on this side for how I do it. And then simply just lift that over like so. And we want to be picking up stitches along the edge all the way around. So I'll just show you. So all the way around the whole of the sleeve. So one more time. So I've gone through the stitch. I'm going to wrap around my thumb, slide it on, pull it tight, then lift this over the top. And I'm going to do that all the way around and then work in 2x2 rib, which as you can see here, again, this is inside out. And I have done that for, I don't know why I've got a wooden ruler rather than my dressmaker's ruler, but I've done that for about 3 centimeters. And I'm going to do that all the way around for around the sleeve and then also around the neckline as well. So I will come back to you and just show you binding off, which is the same as we have done every other time. And then, yeah, I guess I'll be showing you the finished piece. And once you've done your ribbing, what we're going to do is bind off, just like we have been previously for the sleeves.